for joining us again this week. Today, our government affairs team will be bringing you a couple different updates. We'll start with the legislation moving through the Iowa Statehouse. Then we'll give you a recap of Governor Pritzker's State of the State and budget address that he gave this Wednesday. We'll update you on a little bit of the work being done by our congressional delegation in DC, and we'll leave as much time as possible for some Q&A from all of you out there. My name is Jake Ford. I'm the Director of Government Affairs here at the Quad Cities Chamber. Thank you again for spending your Friday morning with us. A little bit of housekeeping first. This program will be recorded and available on the Chamber's website after it is completed. As always, we also want to thank our Legislative Series annual sponsors, AM General LLC, Arconic, Exelon Generation, and Stanley Consultants. For a full list of our 2021 advocacy priorities, please again visit our website. You'll see that we're focused on the COVID-19 response, economic development, business climate, and taxation, bills that are related to education and workforce development, transportation and infrastructure, placemaking, healthcare, and of course, the Rock Island Arsenal. Our Advocacy Action Center on the website is your opportunity to provide feedback on the legislation that's important to you, your business, and the rest of our community. We'll also be sending out updates in our e-news that goes out each week during the middle of the week to keep you updated on what's happening in DC, Springfield, and Des Moines. Again, please use the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. We'll try to get to as many questions that you have as possible. Thanks to you, those of you who submitted ahead of time as well. We'll get to those. There's quite a few of them, so we will reach as many as we can. Before we get started today, I also want to introduce something new that the Chamber is doing this year. We've launched our bill tracking part of our website that'll include bills in the Illinois and Iowa State Houses that we're monitoring on your behalf. You'll have a direct link to the bill, who's sponsoring it, a brief summary of what it does, and the Chamber's position. Right now, we're monitoring quite a few bills. You can see what we're supporting and opposing this early on as well. Part of that is also a feedback form that will allow you to reach out to Rachel and I, our government affairs team, to tell us if we got something wrong, if we should be supporting something, or just to leave a comment on bills that you're seeing as well that are important to your business or important to you. So we'll update that on a weekly basis. If you need a quick place just to find what's happening in both state legislators, please check that out. I want to turn first now to an update on the legislation moving through the Iowa Statehouse in Des Moines. And for that, I will turn things over to our Government Affairs Coordinator, Rachel Anderson.
Thanks, Jake, and hi, everyone. So the Iowa legislature has really hit the ground running after a shortened season last year due to COVID-19. A lot of the focus has been on childcare, broadband extension, and housing bills as outlined in the governor's state condition of the state address earlier this year. We're pleased that these initiatives are going through. Last week, the Iowa House of Representatives passed quite a bit of childcare legislation, some of which address the cliff effect, which implements gradual phase outs of the child care assistance program and increasing the income threshold for the child care tax credit from $45,000 to $90,000. These are initiatives that the Chamber supports, and we're pleased that this will help with the workforce shortage that we are seeing. Additionally, they're looking at development incentives to increase access to childcare next week. Additionally, broadband last week, Governor Reynolds filed House Study Bill 133 and Senate Study Bill 1089 that outlines her proposed $450 million investment in broadband expansion over the next 3 years. This is an additional bill that we support. Also last week, the governor announced her housing bill that will increase workforce housing tax credits, establish a housing tax credit program, expand redevelopment tax credits, create disaster recovery housing assistance from the derecho, support Main Street revitalization efforts for downtowns and main streets and business corridors, and support the State Housing Trust Fund. Important to note is that Iowa is approaching its first funnel, March 5th. This means that bills must be moved out of committee to be considered for floor vote. It's a way of filtering out this legislation. Bills that are appropriations related and run through committees such as Ways and Means are not subject to the first funnel. So we've got a busy week ahead. making sure that these bills, the bills that we care about, that you care about, make it through that first funnel. I'll pass it on to Jake for the Illinois side and look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Rachel. Iowa's certainly gotten off to a much quicker start than Illinois. In Illinois, we're seeing some online committees that have kicked off. There's bills being introduced, but the main update from there was the governor's State of the State and Budget Address that was given this Wednesday. In that address and in accompanying documents that the governor's office put out, we're seeing a major focus on solving the state's fiscal issues through what they're calling closing corporate loopholes. So some of those changes we believe could hurt companies growing in Illinois or to give fewer reasons for new businesses to set up in Illinois or to invest in Illinois. Specifically that it would reduce the amount of key tax credits that are utilized in Illinois. So some of those changes that the governor's proposed that, again, they're calling closing tax loopholes, are capping the corporate net operating loss for corporations to $100,000 per year. They're also looking at rolling back some of the tax changes that were implemented in 2017 under former President Trump. There's also an idea to cap the retailer's discount. It's currently at 1.75% of the sales tax. They're looking to cap that on a per month basis. And then they're going to review and reverse some of the Illinois tax changes that took place in 2019. So for some of you that remember, Governor Pritzker, when he first came in, kind of to get his first budget passed, made some of these promises that these programs would stick around. It now seems that those might be going away. So we're going to be sending out a survey on that topic to learn more about how some of these tax changes could impact our employers and to really get a feel of what these would mean for the Quad Cities regional economy as well. Each of these, importantly to note, would have to be passed individually through the legislature. So there will be some oversight on this. These are not unilateral actions. And this is just the governor's proposal. There's going to be a process that plays out from now until May where legislators will have a voice. So please reach out to the chamber. Please reach out to your legislators. Let them know if these things are going to be affecting them. We, again, just worried about, especially coming out of COVID-19, that we want to make sure tax incentives in Illinois stay in place and that we're keeping growing companies moving in the right direction and not trying to force them out of the state of Illinois. Just some other quick highlights from the governor's address. He is proposing to reappropriate $303 million for capital grants like the Shovels Ready program and Opportunity Zone investments. He also noted that they're intending to set aside any new federal COVID relief money to set that aside for small businesses directly. That was, of course, part of the big program originally. We're happy to see that. We think that's a great move from them. We know small businesses are not going to be back to 100% quite yet after COVID. So we'll ask you again to stay in touch with us. Let us know when you see things coming out. We'll be pushing out information to you on those fronts, but those are the main takeaways. There's a long process that's going to be coming now. So we'll be staying on top of the budget negotiations. Illinois should be getting to work on a little bit more legislative proposals as well. So it'll be a busy few months on both sides of the river, but we are, of course, looking forward to making sure you stay in tune with all that is happening. Moving now just to a quick couple updates from our federal delegation. Obviously, if you're following what's happening in DC, the American Rescue Act seems to be the big message that's being pushed right now. It seems as if it's heading for a vote next weekend. That is the $1.9 trillion stimulus package. There's still many details to be worked out there related to direct payments, again, state and local funding. And of course, we're monitoring if a $15 minimum federal wage would be implemented. It seems as if that's got a rocky road to passage, but of course we know that would affect many people on both sides of the river. So we will try our best as details are coming out next week to keep you updated through e-news and all of our other channels. As always, if you have questions, please reach out to us via the Action Center or directly by email or phone. We're happy to talk to businesses or whoever has questions. Moving more to our congressional delegation, Representative Bustos introduced the Small Business Succession Planning Act, which we have signed on to. It's a plan that would incentivize employers to put in place succession planning to keep their business operating after significant changes happen to their business, whether that's through the death of a leader or through a change in leadership. It's a great program. We're happy to work with her on that. It's a small boost to companies for putting together a plan for the future. That's what we're looking for. We want companies to make sure that it's not just a 1 year or 3 year plan, but that they're planning long in the future to keep their Quad Cities presence known. So we thank her for that. She was also recently named the chair of the House Agriculture Subcommittee on General Farm Commodities and Risk Management. So for those of you in the ag community, that's a great step for us. She'll have a great voice on kind of the risk management procedures that are going on there as well. On the other side of the river, Representative Miller Meeks, who was provisionally seated, has also been placed on the House Education and Labor Committee. And Senator Ernst on the Iowa side has also been involved pretty deeply with the COVID stimulus discussions and has recently reintroduced legislation to establish grants to invest in childcare in rural communities. She's pushing back on the federal $15 minimum wage. We are in pretty good communication with them as well. So if you have questions about that or anything else Senator Ernst is working on, please reach out to us or to her office. They're a great resource for us here in the Quad Cities. Finally, the Chamber has also signed on to the U.S. Chamber's plan to ask Congress to implement a large infrastructure package by the 4th of July. Obviously, there are many infrastructure projects that are coming through the Quad Cities and that we're advocating for to be completed, but we're looking for that next phase in the next few years of what is going to be happening. So we'll keep you in touch on all of that federal news and what else is to come. But in the meantime, please let us know if you have questions, and we'll let you know if that $1.9 trillion package is going to be passed, and if it is signed, what it'll mean for you. With that, we're going to open it up to some questions. I know we had some previously asked questions, so I will start with one that we got quite a few about. Some were before the governor's budget address, some were after, and it mainly revolves around what's going to happen with Illinois tax credits. I touched on this briefly just a minute ago. There's a lot changing. There's a lot going on. The governor proposed about 7 or 8 changes that he believes would result in the state saving almost $1 billion. I would tell you that tax incentives obviously are very important in economic development, keeping companies here in Illinois. We know that they have the opportunity to go across the river and set up shop if they want to. Reach out to us, make sure that you're talking to your legislators, because this is something that'll be debated pretty heavily this year in Illinois. There's going to be a lot of moving parts to the budget, and part of that will be the tax incentives that are in place and that continue to be negotiated. So it's a moving target. We don't know quite yet what we're going to be advocating for. We know the things that we believe would be troublesome for the Quad Cities economy, but please reach out to us when we send out the survey. We want to hear from you on kind of the changes that would be happening. With that, I'm going to open it up to some more questions. If anybody has them, please insert them into the box, and we'll roll through a few more of the pre-recorded questions. So we've also gotten a question about some specific bills in Iowa, and I'm also seeing some other questions relating to the Illinois side. I want to address the Iowa question first. There's a bill coming through that is essentially, I'll try my best to describe it for you. It incentivizes folks to save money, to put money into a savings account, and then there would then be a raffle drawing that would give a prize incentive is the main focus of the bill. I've seen so far that some of the larger banks have come out against it. The chamber has not yet taken a position on that. We're doing a little bit more research. We're talking to our legislators to see if there's things we haven't heard yet about it. But we appreciate you bringing that to our attention. I know it's a great way for folks after COVID-19 to start building up some savings again if there wasn't. We'll continue to monitor that and other kind of savings programs that are being implemented in Iowa. We've also got a question related to the relief funds that Governor Pritzker plans on making available to small businesses. It will be coming through the federal stimulus. They haven't yet said if it would be through the same big program, but like I said, they're setting aside that money. They're earmarking it to say that whatever comes from the feds, they want to make sure a portion of that is going directly to small businesses. Is there any relief to small businesses on the rise in minimum wage? You know, there hasn't been a real discussion yet on the impact, I suppose, of what would happen with the federal minimum wage, just because it's early on. We don't know if it'll even be included yet in that $1.9 trillion package. So again, next week it's being marked up in the House committee on Monday, I believe at noon. So if you're very interested, tune into that. We'll kind of see the details as they get fleshed out. I just say that if you're following kind of political news, there's been a little bit of pushback, obviously, on raising the minimum wage. And I think the president and other congressional Democrats have been a little bit wary of that happening just because the process of it. They have to either get it through reconciliation or they'd have to pass it on its own. And it doesn't seem like there's been a decision yet on if it'll be part of the reconciliation process. So we will see there. Statewide, I'm seeing a question again on if there's anything related to business relief just on small businesses. And again, that the budget address was just Wednesday. We don't have a ton of details yet. I'm pouring through kind of the line by line of the budget. We're happy to reach back out as we know more. But like I said, the details of this was just a proposal. It's going to be discussed for the next couple of months going through the process of committee hearings, budget negotiations, and budgeteers really putting their heads together. The other main part that I haven't mentioned previously is that a few years back, Illinois implemented a funding formula for their K through 12 schooling. At this point in time, the $350 million increase is not included in that. So that'll of course be part of the budgeteers negotiating and kind of working the system as well. So we'll keep you updated on that. We've got a question about tenure. Rachel, I think I'm going to throw that one to you. There's an Iowa bill that would eliminate tenure at Iowa public universities. Do you have some information on that?
Yes, so we have not registered in support or opposition of this particular bill. We are monitoring it. We are part of the Iowa Chamber Alliance that is, we have members of about 15 or 16 chambers statewide. And some of those chambers have the regents universities in their district. So the Iowa Chamber Alliance has registered in opposition of this bill. We'll continue to monitor it as the Quad Cities Chamber, but other chambers and the ICA, they are in opposition of it.
Great. And Rachel, I think we've got, could you just talk a little bit more about childcare in Iowa? I know there's the big bill, but I think there's been 9 or 10 bills introduced. Is that right? This is going to be a big topic. Any more insight on kind of where they're heading on childcare?
Yes, so it looks very promising on the childcare front. Assistance for providers and for parents and caretakers. That passed last week, the House, it's in the Senate. We're fortunate to have very responsive elected officials here in the Quad Cities. And I was part of a small roundtable earlier this morning with United Way of our region on childcare. And it was a good discussion about how these bills have moved through the Iowa House and they're now in the Senate. And although we do not have senators that are on the Human Resource Committee where these bills are now located, they will dig into them once they get to the floor, but it looks like it has pretty broad support. And there's also tax incentives in the works in the House for expanding facilities for childcare. Additionally, working through the numbers of how many children can a child care provider take at one time. I know it's a very full force effort happening in the House, and once those bills go to the Senate, we're hopeful that the Senate will take them and pass them and send them along to the governor. If you have other specific questions, that would be great. I don't know. There's a lot to cover with childcare. There's a lot of bills that touch on similar things in Iowa, but they're all slightly different enough where they're in different legislation. So we're parsing through those. But in general, it's looking very promising.
Great, thanks. We're also getting some questions about, there's an Iowa bill related to TIF. I'm assuming a couple of our attendees are asking about House Study Bill 194 that takes aim at TIF districts a little bit. We're talking with, again, the Iowa Chamber Alliance and with our Iowa state legislators about what this would mean. I would imagine that it passed out of subcommittee yesterday. The question was, does it have legs? If it's out of subcommittee, it's not quite there yet, but it passed 2-1 yesterday in that first subcommittee. So we're continuing to monitor that. We'll let you know. It's something that we'll be eventually registering in opposition to because we know it would hurt economic development on the Iowa side of the river. So if that's a bill you're referring to, I'm happy to talk more about that if you have a bill number, but certainly we're monitoring that and we'll keep you updated on if it keeps moving through the legislative process.
It looks like we have a question from Ken Beck that asks us about Senate Study Bill 1079, which would allow property owners to refuse accepting federal rent vouchers. This is another bill we're monitoring, but we have not yet taken a position on. sorry, I had a notification. I'm supposed to shut those off. We're supposed to be monitoring. We are monitoring. Scott County does not have any rules right now that are in place that require property owners to accept federal rent vouchers. So this bill doesn't necessarily pertain to us in that it would change our current regulations within Scott County. I know Des Moines, this affects Des Moines. I believe it affects, I'm only certain about Des Moines. But this is one we're monitoring, but it does not directly affect the regulations of Scott County.
That's great. We also got a question about placemaking. I just wanted to note again, if you all hadn't seen, last Friday, Governor Reynolds did visit the Quad Cities. She met with our Downtown Davenport partnership, and Kyle Carter kind of explained to her placemaking and the great work that the Downtown Davenport partnership has done to kind of build up downtown Davenport and what that could mean for the rest of Iowa. So we had a great event last Friday. It was great to have the governor in town and to have her visit some small businesses, and just to have 2 hours of her attention and kind of explain more about the Quad Cities and to talk about our identity. So placemaking is going to be a huge focus, I think, next session in Iowa. It got bumped a little bit by some of those bigger priorities we've been talking about so far, but certainly it was great to have her here and to talk about a big issue that's important to us and is a main advocacy priority for the chamber. So that was a great event. Any other questions? We got another 8 minutes here. So Rachel and I are happy to talk amongst ourselves and continue talking about our priorities, but we want to get to as many questions as possible. We got another question about the Illinois state budget. There's been some discussion about whether that is in balance or out of balance. The governor presented a $41.6 billion spending plan. You'll see a couple of competing arguments here. The governor and other allies of his will tell you it's balanced based on some borrowing, some interfund borrowing, some federal borrowing. And then those corporate loopholes that we talked about again that have to be passed first by the legislature. So there's been some pushback there. That'll kind of drive the discussion and is a talking point of whether it's balanced or not, obviously. But if you're seeing two different sides there, that's why. You can say it's balanced in terms of what he's proposing if all were to go through and all were to work out well. But some of the Republican legislators have said, until that's passed, you can't count this as balanced. So that's the best answer I can give there. He generates that additional revenue by diverting some money that's earmarked for local municipalities as well. So the local government distributive fund would be reduced to 90% of its original funding. But the governor claims that with those loopholes put back, the local governments would actually be receiving more money. So there's a lot of inside baseball happening with the Illinois budget. And again, I know these are questions everybody wants answers to right now, but it's going to be a long process. We're going to have to work through this over the coming months, and we'll be doing our best to keep you updated on all that. Rachel, looks like we also have a question on broadband and where that's at moving through the Iowa legislature. Could you give an update there?
Yeah, broadband. Last week it was passed. It was sent through committee, and it looks like it has broad support through the House, through the Senate. We're still working on the legislation. I can get more details to you after this on the specifics of where that legislation is. We had a question on what the chamber is doing to support human services agencies in the Quad Cities. We're constantly working with various partners. The Human Services Agency is something that we're working on building additional relationships with. We've been in talks with the HHS, Quad Cities HHS, and their economic values presentation. And we're looking forward to being a partner with them and helping them connect with our legislators to show that human services are a vital part of our community and economy.
Great, thank you. We also had a question about the arsenal and kind of what's been happening there. I'll point you to, I think it was last week we put out a release, and Representative Bustos again was great in securing some funding there, and all of our delegation was, and hitting, I think, just about every priority we had in 2020 for the Rock Island Arsenal. So we're starting that process again. We're meeting with our congressional delegations and staff to let them know about some of the priorities that the Arsenal has, just to pass that along early on to get involved in the appropriations process. So that's where a lot of our priorities funnel through from the Rock Island Arsenal through the appropriations process. So that's where that kind of stands for now. Again, for more details on that, we put out a pretty detailed release on exactly what the Arsenal has gotten and kind of our priorities for the next year. So please let me know if you have more kind of direct questions on that. But that press release we put out last week is a great detail for you. Anything else here in our last few minutes? I think we're trying our best. Thank you to everybody who's put all of these questions in. This is exactly what we're looking for, and we hope that it's not just every Friday that you join us to ask questions, but please reach out during the week or any time that you're seeing something in the community that we haven't touched on yet. We want to make sure that we're getting you answers on any legislative issue or kind of priority that your business or industry has. So please stay in touch.
We have a question on a bill in Iowa that proposed a local entertainment surcharge tax district. That has been indefinitely postponed. I do not see that one moving forward. It was stalled in subcommittee.
All right, while we wait for some few more questions here, I just want to flag for everybody that 2 weeks from now on March 5th, I believe, will be our next legislative event. So we'll of course stay in touch between then, but please join us again in 2 weeks. That topic has not yet been set, but we will be bringing you another timely topic that we are hoping to discuss with all of you. I'm going to give a last call for questions here. Otherwise, again, thank you everybody for joining us. I want to, of course, thank AM General LLC, Arconic, Exelon Generation, and Stanley Consultants. They are our great legislative event series annual sponsors, and the rest of the chamber team here who helps us put this event on together. With that, if I'm not seeing any other questions, thank you for everyone for joining us again today. This has been great. We love interacting with all of you and making sure we're getting to all of your questions. So I apologize if we missed anybody. If there's anything we didn't get to, please send us an email after. You can find all of our contact information on the chamber website, and let us know if there's anything else on your mind. Until then, thanks again for joining us. We will see you in 2 weeks, and have a great weekend.